Hello, I am Bree. I am the history half of Pontifex, and this is part 2 of our AMA leading up to our anniversary special coming out next week. So now I'm going to answer a couple questions about Pope things. So, Podcast on Germany asks, what is the most ludicrous thing a Pope has said? And also give a hilarious quote out of context. So, I think this one kind of answers both. Pope Leo X is famed to have said, God gave us the papacy, let us enjoy it. But I also love, these ones will have a little bit of context, but Pope Benedict XII, upon his election, is famed to have either said, you have elected an ignoramus, or you have elected an ass, because he was kind of elected by accident, and he didn't really want to do that. So, and I love the one of Pope John the 23rd, who was asked by a reporter how many people worked in the Vatican, and he said, about half of them. And that just feels like perfect, perfect comedy gold. I like a lot of the quotes out of Leo the 13th as well, who, when he was attacked by the gazelle, he said, did you think a lion should be frightened by a gazelle? That's in my article on popes and pets, but it stood out to me as being quite amusing. So, question number 2 from 8000 Nat on Twitter. He asked, what future pope are you looking forward to covering? Surprise, the answer is I'm really excited to do the Medici popes. So, we would be doing like Leo X, Leo XI, who's known as the Lightning Pope, Clement VII. So, Leo X and Clement VII are really, really interesting. And then we also have Pius IV, who's tangentially related to the Medici. So, obviously, I'll be pretty excited to cover them. I'm also really excited to do Celestine V because I think he has a really, really unique story in all of papal history, really. And Pius XII because he's extremely controversial. I think that he's been held in a very negative regard. I mean, literally, we have Hitler's Pope, right? It's his image and his reputation has been one that is fairly criticized, but we do know that March of this year they opened the Vatican archives and more information is coming out about what he actually did to save people. So I'm looking forward to covering that and digging into depth with him. It's going to be a controversial one, it's going to be a heavy one, but it'll be really interesting. And of course, I'm excited to cover all of the big scandalous stories. Stephen the Sixth, Benedict the Ninth, Alexander Sixtus. Like, yeah, they're all going to be great too. But I'm particularly always excited to find the ones that aren't as well talked about. So, um, David Montgomery from the Siècle podcast said, you are forming a D&D adventuring party out of popes. Clement I, Leo I, Gregory I, and Damasus. What are their classes? So, Clement I want to say maybe like a bard, more because I think his story is really interesting, and even though that doesn't reflect in his personality, I think it would be great if he was going around and telling bardy stories or singing bardy songs about his own, the Clementine literature and things like that. So I would say bard. Leo the First screams paladin to me. He just seems like he would be like the holy fighty man, and I'm up for that. Gregory the First, maybe a monk. I don't know. I was trying to think of a class that's more reclusive, and then Damasus, rogue. What else could he be? He's just sneaky and shifty and the lady's ear tickler. So I don't know. It just feels very roguish. Ethan from the History of How We Play asked, which pope do you think is the most badass? Since that's not part of your rating. And I think of the ones we've covered, definitely Leo the First. However apocryphal the actual story of him going and meeting Attila the Hun may be, because it's generally accepted that this may have happened. I just think that takes an incredible amount of guts, and that's awesome. If I had to come up with a second, probably Martin the First, because he just went to his fate quite willingly, and it was terrible for him, but he was not willing to relent at any stage, and that's pretty badass. The Kings and Queens podcast asks which pope deserves to be more famous than they are and why. And I think our episode on Pope Honorius demonstrates how we feel about that. I really think that the heretic pope, who was actually a really, really, really great pope, should definitely be better known. I feel for him a lot, and I really want to get his story out there. And he is still in our top 3 ratings right now, even though he's known as the heretic pope. So I think that speaks for itself, really. So that is part 2. Join us again tomorrow, and I will have more answers for you.